Let's take a break from the starter set. Hey everybody, Sebastian here from Sebastian's Cauldron. Today we are talking about one-shots. One-shot is a loose term that people use that are describing either a short adventure that can be completed in a single session or something that's short and can be done in 2 to 3 sessions. Anything longer than that, and I think you're starting to get into actual campaign sort of territory. But one-shots are a fantastic way to take a break from a long-running campaign, or to give something new a try, or to even flesh out the history and world of your campaign, especially if you're doing homebrew. I am a really big fan of one-shots. I've used them quite a lot. I used one-shots very early on in my campaign when I came across the main issue that I always have with D&D, which is scheduling and getting everyone together. And I discovered that they are really fantastic in sort of giving important plot cues that the players wouldn't really get through normal plays, such as finding out that Neznar, this evil drow necromancer, is the great-great-great-grandfather of the Black Spider that they're dealing with in the starter set Lost Mines of Phandelver, which is something I added in. Most of the one-shots I have done have only had 2 player characters. It seems to be a sort of recurring thing. I'm thinking back to, pretty much 2 characters. 2 characters can cause a bit of issue with the action economy. You sort of have to either give them sidekicks or retainers. You can find sidekicks in Tash's Cauldron of Everything. You can find the retainers in Strongholds and Followers. If you want, that's like a little easy way to give the players an extra sort of smaller character to run to help with combat. One-shots are a really great way to give players a bit more spotlight than they normally would if there are 4, 5, or 6 people at the table. Let them be a little more comfortable role-playing and, playing around with things that they might not have a chance to in the normal campaign. So as I mentioned, I've run several one-shots. My first one was in the city of Martzlock, which I'll put a map up there. They had to fight, as I said, Neznar, this drow necromancer, and this one-shot ended up tying into the Lost Mines of Phandelver game that I was running. The Black Spider was rediscovering the work of Neznar, who was trying to create potions of Gaius to take control of people and, be generally evil. It was my first campaign, it wasn't great. But the one-shot, I think, was pretty fun. I only had 2 players and they really enjoyed it. I find that one-shots are almost more memorable than the actual campaign sessions themselves, because there's always some weird and wacky stuff that happens in the one-shots. And I think they're really great at getting your players to buy into the world more, to sort of feel more connected to the history and to the world building and everything that you've worked so hard to create. Doing something like introducing Neznar and having him connect to the Black Spider sort of makes what's happening with the Black Spider sort of really memorable and makes them think like, well, we know that what this other guy was doing was bad, so if this dude does his thing successfully, that's not going to go well. You can use one-shots, like I said, as a world-building tool to help expand villains. I'm currently running a series of loosely connected one-shots in the region of Thaltor, just because everyone's been super busy, scheduling has been really hard, and I sort of thought, well, if we only have 2 or so people, I know I can still run a D&D session. Why not play something? And it gives me the added benefit of, coming up with some cities, locations, some general world building for this region that we'll probably use in the future. So we've been doing that. You can use one-shots as well to help a player develop a more fleshed out backstory. I've talked about a couple of times in this channel, one of my players created this character named Angelo de Terra, which was basically fantasy Batman. And in order to introduce him into the campaign, I needed to come up with a way for him to sort of end up meeting with the rest of the players. So I ran a one-shot detailing how he left the city of Ergon. Some crazy stuff happened that we still talk about to this day. Saint Ajax himself appeared and did some devastating attacks. Angelo had to roll, I think, 2 natural 20s in a row in order to sort of get out alive, and he did exactly that. The first one he rolled, he was able to knock a tooth out of Ajax's mouth, which ended up embedding in his hand. And then the second one was to be able to actually escape. I think he did some crazy Batman sort of stunt where he jumped onto the chandelier in the hallway, cut it, and then he dropped down several stories using his monk's slow fall ability to negate most of the damage. It was insane. We still talk about it when we play in person. He tries to find the set of dice that he used to make a god bleed, which is, I think, so cool. It was one of the most satisfying D&D sessions I've ever run. One-shots can be used also to sort of sate your appetite for other sort of genres and everything at the moment, and sort of just in general, I am a really big fan of flintlock fantasy. I've been reading a lot the Powder Mage trilogy amongst some other things. I'm a big Pirates fan, and I sort of really like the idea of, you know, firearms and everything in that sort of fantasy setting. That's why I have a gunslinger and all of that nonsense in Ascension. But Thaltor, for me, is a way to sort of sate my appetite personally, and also to introduce a few cool classes and things that wouldn't really make sense in the current campaign. I've explained that in Andrum, in the region that they're in Ascension of Ajax, they don't really have firearms. There is a gunslinger There is a gunslinger who is developing her own weapons, revolvers, and a BFG, because you've got to have a BFG if you're making a gun. Come on. And really, they haven't encountered many other people who have firearms. There is one noble house, House Venture, that has firearms, but it's a very closely guarded secret. However, far to the east, I've got a map of Andrum, and I've got some sort of vague notes, so eastwards is Thaltor, and over in Thaltor, they have a lot more guns. It's sort of more Napoleonic, like French Revolution, Industrial Age sort of era. Think of Andrum as more sort of Renaissance, pre-Renaissance times. Thaltor is more of that Napoleonic era. So they have flintlock pistols, muskets. There's a few people that have pepper boxes, but no one's really seemed to make revolvers or anything sort of, you know, that Wild West sort of thing. So when I was trying to plan a session for Ascension, and I could only really get 2 people running because we had 2 people cancel on the day, which sucks. But I basically said, well, hey, I have this region, I have this area that I want to build up. Let's do some one-shots. You guys can make some characters. I gave them a long setting dump, which is basically what I mentioned there about the firearms and everything. And they've made characters, and we've run, I think, one shot in Thaltor in which they fought an amethyst dragon, which was super cool. Shout out to Strongholds and Followers, because they have some super awesome monsters. You should absolutely check it out. And through that, through prepping the one-shot, through improvising a bit of lore and everything, I now have a bunch of world building done for this region. Easy. It took no time at all. I think the turnaround on having the initial idea for the one-shot to actually running it was about a day, which took just a few hours of prep work. And from there, I have some really great flavor, world building, etc. that I can use in the future. If Ascension ever decides to travel east far enough, they'll eventually get to Thaltor, if they would do that for whatever reason. But it's just a really fun way. It's sort of interactive as well. You can let the players sort of help build up things. D&D is, after all, a collaborative storytelling game. Not only can one-shots help sate your appetite for other genres, they can also sort of give you a chance to play with the tone a little bit. If your games are more sort of irreverent and on the silly side, you could maybe use a one-shot to play something a little more serious and grimdark. Perhaps it's Halloween and you want to run Strahd Must Die Tonight, in which you have to go through Castle Ravenloft in order to fight Count Strahd, which is difficult. I haven't run it yet. I think it would be really cool. I don't really do Halloween stuff here in Australia. We don't really celebrate Halloween, but it looks like fun. You could do other holiday stuff. It is Christmas in 5 days as of filming this. You could run something on or around Christmas. You could kill Santa, you could help Santa, you could do something to do with giving children presents, I suppose. If your game is super combat heavy, perhaps a one-shot is a chance for you to get your players to roleplay more and to sort of uncover a web of political intrigue. If your game is super roleplay heavy, perhaps a one-shot is a chance for you to throw them through a meat grinder and use Tucker's kobolds or something super sinister like that in order to test your players strategically and see what they can do under pressure. There are chances as well for the players to try new things, to see if perhaps your player that plays fighters all the times would maybe like to try out a wizard or a warlock or something that doesn't just go whack 4 times in a row, and one-shots are a great way to even try out new systems. I am at the moment reading through the Pathfinder core rulebook. This thing is heavy, by the way. This is the pocket edition. I think the normal editions are supposed to be like the normal D&D book size. You can see that there. Significantly smaller, the same weight. It's stupidly thick. But I've been reading through this because I plan on swapping to Pathfinder once Ascension finishes, which will be 2 years' time, something along like that. I'm planning on taking these guys to level 20 and they're at level 10 now, so we've got a bit of time, bit of stuff to go through first. But I really like the sound of Pathfinder. I like the customizability, all those sort of noodly components, and I like that they have firearms built into it. I don't have to do a bunch of extra homebrew stuff to add them in. So I might even consider doing a Pathfinder one-shot at some point in the near future, just to, you know, dip my toes in and see what things are like. So go out, do some one-shots. They are a lot of fun. It really helps you, especially if you're doing homebrew one-shots, really helps to get your writing chops up to scratch. Trying to write a short story, trying to write a short adventure, something that can be done in 4 hours, is kind of difficult. By no means am I saying I am good at it. I am certainly still learning how to do it, but I think trying to come up with a set amount of content that you know you'll be able to get through in 4 hours can be really challenging. But when you have an idea, especially if you're doing it with long-standing players that you've been playing with for a while, you can get a good feel for how long combat or something will take, and you can really curate a 4-hour experience for your players. I say 4 hours, it doesn't have to be. It can be 3, it can be 5, it can be however long a session's gonna be. I reckon if I was gonna do the Strahd Must Die tonight, I would make that a long, like marathon, like 6-7 hour, just because Strahd's an epic villain. It should be an epic sort of, an epic game. I can't imagine playing Strahd as anything but grandiose and over the top. If you are gonna run a one-shot, let me give you a couple of super quick tips. The first one being, you're probably going to have to either railroad your players a little bit or make it very, very obvious what it is that they should feel like they're going to be going to do. If you've set up a really cool adventure in which a dragon is going to attack and they have to go and find the dragon, don't then have them sitting in the tavern sort of twiddling their thumbs and waiting for someone to prompt them to go find the dragon. You have limited amount of time, so you want to make sure that they are jumping onto the plot right away. Have the dragon swoop down and crush the tavern. That's what I did on Thursday when I ran the one shot. They were told they had to go and find and kill a dragon, and I just had the dragon appear and start breaking stuff and start burning the village down. It was I stole it from Skyrim. Yeah, that's fine. You steal things, that's what you do as a dungeon master. I would also say make sure that you are able to add on content if you think it's not going to go for long enough, and make sure you're able to remove content if you think it's going to go on for too long. I had this happen when I ran a one-shot for one of my players' 21st. I had 4 combat encounters prepared for them at level 17 with 5 players, 5 or 6, something like that. I ended up having to axe one entire section of an Illithid Spelljammer just because we were not going to have time and I needed to have them fight this boss. I wanted it to be a one and done adventure. That one shot was particularly interesting. It was my first time running something higher than like 11th level, and man, high level play is difficult. I totally understand why a lot of people don't do it. I totally understand why they don't really write adventures for it, but it makes me really sad that they don't. I feel like there's very little support for people trying to do anything higher than like 13th level or so. It gets really difficult. So that's the video. Go out, run some one-shots. They're a lot of fun. You can do some really cool things that you might not normally do in a campaign. And if you do enough one-shots with the same characters, the same setting and everything, you're basically doing a second campaign, or you're basically creating a campaign awesome, sweet. There's a lot of people out there that would be running campaigns that are just loosely connected one-shots. You can easily do things like having an agency or something hire the adventurers to go out and do quests, and after like 5 or 6 of those, you basically have a recurring plot line. I think there's rules for like group patrons and stuff in Tasha's Cauldron of Everything. It's a book that I haven't quite read through yet. I've read enough to sort of know that there's stuff in there I like, stuff that I don't like, but that's fine. That's how it usually goes. But I haven't looked at the patron stuff yet. I might look at that sometime in the future. So that's the video. You can do all of the usual stuff. Go out and do a one-shot, please. It'll make me very happy. It'll make your players very happy as well. You can share this around, do all that usual stuff, and I'll see you guys some other time.